Hi guys, welcome to a Creatively Me with Bree, where we will be doing watercolor today. I know my typical content tends to be digital, but I also love watercolor and I wanted to share this project with you guys today. Spring is just around the corner, and I don't know about you guys, but I am so ready for it. With that being said, let's jump in. I recommend for a larger piece like this is a 9 by 12, making sure that you tape your piece down to the table. I had a couple projects that I was working on and needed to be able to move this quickly. So I have a bunch of watercolor paper taped together to sort of create some stability for the paper that I'm working on, but don't do that. So first, I make sure that I saturate this entire paper with some water. I do this using this brush. You can kind of see that the water has a slight tint to it. That's because I was using old water. Don't do what I do, do as I say. I know, I hate that saying, but it's true. Make sure you have fresh water. I don't have fresh water, and you can tell by the slight discoloration. But we're going to proceed as though that's not an issue here, right? Right. You'll also notice up at the top left, I have a little water bottle. I keep that nearby because for pieces like this, if I miss a spot, I can easily re-wet it with just a spritz. Now, is this the proper way to do it? Probably not. I don't know. I love watercolor, but I am by no means a professional. I just do what I like and looks pretty. To me, it's okay if you don't think what I do is pretty. I respect that. The watercolor set that I am using for this is the Grabby watercolor set. I believe it's the 100, and I have no affiliation with them. I enjoy their watercolors. They're really nice and vibrant, and they lift easily. They're really good quality for the price. I am using a reference, which I have linked down below if you would like to not only use the reference, but also support that artist. Right now I'm just dropping in colors in areas to sort of establish where the background is. I'm also doing the sky right here with a really, really light pink. I do put some blue in there in a moment, but I'm just trying to get the background sort of established. I am, as I said, just dropping in color and trying to be really careful not to blend the purple with the sky colors. I want them to just naturally bleed together with the help of the water that's saturated in the paper. When we try to like blend the colors, that's when you can start to lose some of the detail, as well as sometimes you can muddy the colors, and we're not looking to muddy up the colors. We're really trying to keep everything separate. So again, you're going to see me adding down some shapes and colors where I think I will have flowers in the field. You'll also see that I drop in some various pinks, but also green to establish where the grass and leaves will be. I encourage you to remain loose. I say that as someone that struggles with that. Here's where I can see that the water on the paper has started to dry too much, and so I re-wet the paper with some little spritz so I can move things around a bit more because I do want this first layer to be very loose. I just want to get down my colors and shapes, but not too much detail. Detail is something that we can add towards the end. I still very much consider myself like new to watercolor, simply because even though I started almost 2 years ago, I have not practiced it consistently enough to feel like I have the confidence that I do, like when I do my digital art. But I do feel like I'm learning a lot, and that some not all of my pieces they turn out well, and others we pretend they didn't happen. I think something that I try to remind myself is that you can correct some of the errors that you make in watercolor. And I used to really have this firm belief that once you'd made a mistake, it was really hard to fix. And, some are challenging, some cannot be easily as fixed as others. but I've started to really understand um, how to lift paint, how to re-wet paint, and rework it. You know, especially building layers is so important before I try to get all the colors and placement of everything just right in the first go. And it simply just it doesn't work that way. I honestly, what medium does, but I really wanted to try and get it all done, and learning to have patience for it to dry in between the layers, or understanding um, when to add while the paper is still wet and at what level of dampness the paper needs to be at in order to build certain parts in. So it's been an adventure. If you are newer to watercolor and you're struggling, your struggle and your frustration is valid, but also give yourself a lot of grace, because there is definitely a learning curve to watercolor. It is, in my opinion, just very different from using like acrylic or gouache. I suppose what I'm trying to say is, if you're looking for a medium that will challenge you and your patience, this could be an option for you, because it certainly has challenged me and my patience, but all in good ways. So now I'm going in with what I would consider like the second layer, if you will. I'm trying to get a little bit more definition and detail. Still not over the top, but just slowly building in more, grass blades and weeds, and um, like where I want my plants, my little florals, to show up. And yeah, just taking my time with it, not overthinking. As much as I am using a reference, I'm also trying really hard to just do this as intuitively as possible, meaning I am not overthinking this if I can help it. I am trying really hard to move swiftly, to not pause too long, to not overthink where the next brushstroke's going to be, and just kind of let my hand and my creativity do the work, you know? You may have noticed further back that I used both tissue paper to help lift some paint and help dry an area a little bit more. And I also have a heating tool, a little handheld heating tool that I use sometimes to um, help dry the paper, sometimes all the way, sometimes just partially. In this case, it was only partially. I still wanted there to be some moisture on the paper, but I just didn't want it to. I didn't want it to be like drenched. So I did. I did use that. Of course, you can, proceed with your own project without that tool. I think mine was like $12 offline, but um, you just, if you don't have that, have maybe like your fan going or have a window open. Those things can help dry paint a little bit faster if you're impatient like me. And not a requirement, but I absolutely enjoy and recommend having a color wheel or a color theory chart of some kind. You can see my color wheel off to the side there. It's really nice to have on hand. It really helps me in terms of like planning out projects and my color palettes, and it's nice to have. And then once again, I just want to point out, I'm trying really hard not to push the colors together. I'm just sort of, tapping them in, placing them down, and letting the paint do the work, because I don't want to muddy the colors. Here I'm using, it's like a round tip brush, and I'm using those to create these petals for these floral elements that we're painting in here. And I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love nature sounds. So if I'm quiet, hopefully these nature sounds will continue to fill the silence with peace. Once I have this layer down, I start to add just water and moving some of the paint around in any areas that I feel like are maybe a little bit too detailed and a little bit too saturated, because I know that they are not our final layer. This is more like the mid-ground, right? We have the background, mid-ground, and foreground of the piece. These are like the mid-ground. So while I do want them to have definition, I also don't want them to sort of steal the spotlight from the foreground. So anything that I feel is too distracting or too vibrant, I'm just sort of toning down with just a little bit of water and um, spreading the paint out a bit. At this point, I would consider this my fourth layer that I'm working on. And the paper is not fully dry, but it is, um, drying. And so there is still some moisture on there. I am working in various hues of green, trying to keep them um, analogous and a little bit monochromatic, but just trying to use various um, saturation, slight color variation, and just working it in so it looks a little bit more organic. Here's where I start to add in just a little bit more uh, detail for the floral elements and in a slightly different color than before. Now we're going to start adding more defined details. So here I drew in some more greenery, and I didn't like how dark that that one is. So I just add some water onto the paper and just move it around a bit, and then I use a tissue and just lift some of that color back up. So it's there, but it's not nearly as vibrant as before. So now I'm starting to get a little bit more into detail, starting to establish some of the floral elements that are a bit more in the foreground rather than in the midground or the background. Here I add some water. It's not very clean water. Like I said, make sure you have clean water you're working with when you start this project, or any project for that matter. But it does, I am able to lift the details, thankfully. Here I'm starting to go in and make some more details for the floral elements, not just the grass and leaves and weeds and whatnot. I don't know if this step was necessary, but I really wanted just some higher contrast with the greens. So I did add in this like 4 foreground, if you will, even more forward than the foreground I mentioned before. Now it's fine as it is, but I do go in with a brush and with just some water and just soften up some of the details in the front because I just didn't feel like it was congruent um, with the other style that I had been painting. But that's just me. Now here is the mistake that I made because my water wasn't clean. So now we end up with gray clouds. This was not intentional, okay? But I was determined to make it look as intentional as possible. Just for full transparency. Once my unintended clouds are dry, I add a few more details and then I strip the paper of the tape so that we can see what it looks like without the taped edges. And thankfully, they turned out nice and clean, but I'm not quite done yet. I'm a big fan of painting some of the nature elements intentionally outside of the lines. So it sort of looks like it's popping off the paper and like coming at you, if you will. Not really sure what happened, but on like the right side of this piece, I just my brush strokes were not happening. Neither was the placement. I think at this point I started to overthink and I wasn't allowing creative flow to happen. Um, I feel like I end up saving it in the end, but I really struggled for some reason at the end here. In hindsight, I feel like I could have done things differently, like my corrections differently, but it is what it is. I do add some water in there to sort of lighten it up, dab away some of the paint, and just try and hide my mistake as best I can with some more paint and some additional floral elements. And again, I'm not sure what happened, but every time I went to this right side of the paper, I just like struggled to get my shapes and the flow right. It really was like the bane of my existence. It's fine, but it was not a pleasant experience. All right, adding the last of my details, and there we go. There's the finished product. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.